Well, hello and welcome, and I hope you're having a good start to your Tuesday. And well, actually, your Tuesday is just about done in terms of school commitment here. And so again, welcome. So as you can see on the screen, we have a little agenda here, and we'll take some time to continue with the study of authoritarians and focus more on Adolf Hitler and look at his rise to power, and then take a look at a document, and we'll look at that document together as a larger group. So before that, kind of start off here with some housekeeping items. Remember, if you're missing any work, you still have some time to turn it in, and I encourage you to do that, please. You have till Tuesday, January 19th to turn in any late assignments, formative or summative. So let's please take care of that. We want to finish this trimester up on a good note. And then also, the student council has a little event on Friday known as Cup of Cheer drive-through event. And it's this Friday from 1 to 3. And you can drive up in your car or get on your bike or even just walk. And the student council is going to pass out a little cup of treats. Looks like a packet of hot cocoa and some positive messages. And so great way to break up your routine to do that. So, and this week looks like we have pretty good weather, and so let's hopefully on Friday good weather for that event. So think about doing it. Sounds like it'll be fun. Okay, and so no easy transition to move from Cup of Cheer to Adolf Hitler, but we're going to make that move to looking at how does Adolf Hitler come to power in a matter of a few years. In order to do that, there is a process, and we want to take a look at that. So I'm going to give some notes, and you can find a copy of those notes in Schoology in the current folder, week 5. You can find them there, and so you can follow along, and you can take your own notes. You can add to them as you want. But also everyone should call up a document known as Advice for a Dictator by Joseph Goebbels. And again, that can be found in week 5 in the current folder. We'll look at that after I get done with my notes. Okay, so let me call up my notes here. All right, so before we start with these notes, does anyone have any questions or concerns? You can always unmute and share it at that point, or you can also put it in the chat, and I will address it as well as we are going through this, okay? So Hitler and Nazi Germany, we're looking at if we're looking for a time period, we're looking at about 1919 to about 1933. And 1933 is when Hitler gets the chancellorship extended to him from Hindenburg. So we're looking at about 14 years. And so when I said a short amount of time, I guess 14 years, very subjective when we talk about time. And so one thing is, before looking at Hitler's rise, Nazism, or the party that Hitler belongs to, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, is sometimes in the category of fascism. So kind of get a little general background of fascism before we jump in and study his rise. So if we look at the origin of fascism, it's a rather incomplete ideology. It comes more into everyday lingo after World War I. You can find bits and pieces of its philosophy out there in the 19th century. But if you look at that photo, you have Adolf Hitler, and then you have Benito Mussolini in there. Benito Mussolini is going to give really a face to what fascism is. You know, similar to Lenin giving communism a face and making it a reality in the 20th century. Benito Mussolini will do that. If we look at some of the basic elements of fascism, it's ultra-nationalistic. There is that social Darwinist race element with it. There is, you know, some combination of capitalist and socialist elements to it as well. Capitalism in terms of, like, you know, the need for business and private property, but socialism, concerns for community and welfare. So there is that conflict, and that will be a constant conflict. And we look at fascism as this idea of this strong leader. It's very anti-democratic in the concept of a strong leader, and both looking at that photo, Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini kind of fit that brand there as well. So in Germany, fascism is going to be Nazism, and Nazism is associated with the National Socialist German Workers' Party there. It has many of these basic elements to it, but then Hitler is going to give his own spin on it as well, and that's what we'll take a look at right now. And so again, if you have questions or concerns, always feel free to unmute and ask for clarification, or put it in the chat. All right. Now, some of the stuff that I'm going to go over, we have talked about already, and so I'll kind of go through it quickly, and then spend some time on the things that we really hadn't discussed. All right. So when we look at the Nazi Party, its first name was German Workers' Party. 1919 was formed by Anton Drexler right at the end of World War I. They created this party to be an alternative to the communists, to try to seduce workers and nationalists into this party, as opposed to moving in the direction of the Communist Party. And Adolf Hitler does join the party in 1919, and they quickly realized this guy is for real, and that he is going to be able to recruit, and he's got really good speaking ability skills, and so they're going to use that as well. And you know, the internet is a fantastic place, and you can see that on the slide is the card for party card for Adolf Hitler there. And so again, the internet is the wonderful place here. You can see there Adolf Hitler and Anton Drexler name all on the same document. All right. He does emerge as the primary leader, so he takes the power strings away from Drexler and he becomes the leader. And if this party is going to have any street cred, it's got to have a platform, and that's where they come up with the 25-point program. So it's kind of like the start of his plan, if we look at it, and the Nazis' plan for getting power. Basically, we don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of the 25-point program, but they basically are nationalists and socialist elements to it, and of course the race piece in there as well. They do change their name because they want to go national, try to get a bigger following, so they simply refer to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Sometimes we see them with their initials NSDSAP. They adopt the swastika, the arms salute. So some of those ceremonial pieces become part of it as well. And the formation of the Sturmabteilung, or simply the SA, the brown shirts. It's kind of like a paramilitary group. And that's not necessarily unusual for them to have these paramilitary groups associated with political organizations, especially in Germany as well. So the Nazi Party has formed and Hitler has emerged. Now, you got to look for the conditions in Germany. And sure enough, there's going to be plenty of problems in Germany that's going to allow for groups like the Nazis to get a little bit more traction. And so the Weimar Republic is the name of the country, the government that is created at the end of the First World War. The Kaiser have abdicated. He went into exile into the Netherlands, and the Weimar Republic is created. And it is extremely weak. To go along with that, Germans resent the Treaty of Versailles. After all, if we remember, they didn't really have a say in it. It was dictated to them. So if there's any woes that are going on in Germany, all you have to do is hit the default button and just blame the Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles is the reasons Germany is struggling. All right. And so the political opposition groups like to point to the Treaty of Versailles and other groups as well. You know, we know the Nazis will also make the scapegoat of the Jews there as well. Because the Weimar Republic is weak, there is plenty of political opposition. And so the opposition threats will come from the left, like groups like the Communist Rising, and then threats from the right, whether it's the Spartacus League or the Nazis who engaged in the beer hall putsch, and I'll explain that in a moment here. The Weimar Constitution that is created in some ways does establish this political instability. It is a parliamentary representation system that doesn't necessarily mean the government is going to be dominated by one particular party, but instead you're going to have a coalition. So like 3 parties could be part of the coalition governments, you know, ministers from different parties, and they got to try to work together. And that's going to create some instability there. So that's a problem there. But maybe another concerning part of the Weimar Constitution, and this is a big one, somehow if you can remember it out there, Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution allows for emergency powers to be enacted by the president of Germany. And the president of Germany at this time is former General Paul von Hindenburg. He's a rock star in Germany, and he'll actually use that at times. But really, the Article 48 does allow for, excuse me, strong leaders to emerge. And so that's a concerning one. So try to remember that. And of course, we know there's economic problems in Germany at this point. That is problematic. That is adding also for this the instability. Again, we're talking about things like hyperinflation, low industrial output, high unemployment. All those things are happening, and so it allows for an event like a beer hall putsch to occur. Now, this is something that I had talked about earlier, and so I don't really need to go into great detail about the beer hall putsch itself. The goal that the Nazis and Adolf Hitler had was simply to try to spark a popular overthrow of the Weimar Republic and institute a right-leaning regime. Fails, sentenced to prison for 5 years, but only serves 9. Writes a book, Mein Kampf, which in there he basically outlines his views of Germany under his own leadership. So when you look at lessons learned from the beer hall putsch, you have the Nazis realize they changed tactics. They're not going to use violence. They're going to go through the ballot. They got to broaden the pardon base, bring in more middle class, and reorganize the party. And so what does that look like? It means in 1926, Adolf Hitler is really the principal leader, Führerprinzip, as they sometimes call it. The SA is going to get a greater role in propaganda. So they'll pass out the leaflets, they'll get the rallies started, they'll do the boycotting, whatever's needed. Then you'll have a creation of an elite bodyguard known as the Schutzstaffel, or the SS, regionalize the party, so move it out of southern Germany and Bavaria and have it different parts of Germany as well, try to create this national brand, and then establish the Hitler Youth. Not mandatory at this time, but it is voluntary. And so 1926, it's reorganized and it's ready to get big. So I guess at this point in 1926, how many Germans actually belong to the Nazi Party? All right. And Germany, I think, is somewhere around 60 million people at this time. So does anyone want to throw out in the chat or unmute and say how many card-carrying members of the Nazi Party there is in 1926? All right, so I'm a little impatient here, and we're looking at about 35,000 is members of the Nazi Party in 1926. So one would say not that many. So somehow between 1926 and 1932, they will get bigger to a point where they will have their best election results, and they become the biggest party in 1932. So that's a huge growth that's going to happen. And so what allows that to happen is there are some conditions out there that create opportunity, like the economic crisis. And it's going to have an impact on German politics, which then now creates that instability, and people want law and order. They want stability, and they look for maybe a principled, strong leader, and Hitler is going to present that. So the impact on German politics here is the chancellors and their governments can't really create the stability. The Great Depression hits Germany hard, and it causes these coalition governments to collapse. So in 1932, the Nazis are the big winners here. They get 230 election seats in August of 1932, so that's huge. And their appeal seems to be because Hitler has presented himself as the alternative to the communists. He has a job creation schemes. He presents himself as a strong leader. He has provided them a scapegoat, which he says are the Jews, as well as this message of fear of a communist revolution. So the messages are very effective, and more middle class is being brought into the fold here. So huge. All right. So with that here, we're almost done. The Nazis come to power, not right away. Through the ballot they do. Hitler loses to Hindenburg, and you can see in this photo Hindenburg when he ran for president in 1932, the one time that he runs for office. And Hindenburg is reluctant to give him the chancellorship. There's a couple Nazis that will get minister posts, but vice chancellor and chancellor position is being withheld at this point. They don't think that Hitler is really the choice here. The Nazi Party in 1932 is in a crisis anyhow. In the autumn of 1932, they're running out of money. There's concerns that the radicals in there are starting to take over the fascists. So the Nazi Party needs to get its house in order again. And then in November of 1932, they have another election. The Nazis do well, but not as well as they did before. But still, they can't get these coalition governments together, and Hindenburg offers the chancellor title to Hitler in January of 1933. And again, if we talk about mistakes, one, they didn't think that the Nazis were going to amount to much based on 1926 reorganization and their efforts. And then him losing the election in 1932, they thought, okay, he's going to go away. But in January of 1933, he doesn't go away, and the chancellorship now is presented to him. And you have you will now have another event that will present itself, known as the Reichstag fire. And the important thing about this is it allows Adolf Hitler to use, and the Nazis to use it to go after their opponents. They quickly point out that it is the communists as well as the Jews that are behind the Reichstag fire, but they're really going after the communists here on this one. And they have another election the following month, and it's amazing. So in Germany, they will have 3 elections in about 6 months or so, and or at least 9 months. They'll have 3 elections. This time, the Nazis will have a huge election success, 288. So about 43% of the vote they will get. And this will be the last democratic election in Germany. And with that new support that the Nazis have in the Reichstag, they're going to be able to now go about creating the type of Germany that they are looking for. The Enabling Act is passed in 1933, which is a big one here. They couldn't pass it, though, without the help of some other nationalist groups. This really, the meaning behind the Enabling Act is it gives legislative power to Hitler. So there are a few things that we should remember about his road to this power, to this dictatorship. And this is one of them, the power of the Enabling Act, that gives him legislative power to really, if this is what the chancellor thinks Germany needs to have, it's going to happen. And so then the legal revolution begins, the Gleichschaltung, as it's sometimes called, the coordinated effort. They're going to go after political opposition leaders because he can do it with the Enabling Act. They can remove any non-Nazis from high civil servant type positions and put Nazis in place. They can do it. The legal revolution has begun. He has to please the conservatives and business leaders in the army, and so he gets rid of the radical elements of the Nazi Party with the Night of the Long Knives. So in June of 1934, the SA is purged from the Nazi Party. Leaders are either executed or sent to prison. Some of the foot soldiers are told to join the army or be part of the SS, but he consolidates his control firmly on the Nazi Party. And then the death of Hindenburg in 1934 seals the deal, where he becomes not only the president, but now he holds also the title head of the Nazi Party and the chancellorship. He assumes the title presidency, he just takes it, and so now he is really the Führer. And so he's in control of Germany. He's consolidated his political power, and now he is going about establishing the Nazi regime in Germany. So it may have taken 19 years to get up to this point, but between 1933 and 1934, he'll act very quickly in creating his dictatorship. Huge. All right. So to recap with this is to look at his path to power as very elaborate, very systematic, I should say, and that he is using events, he's using situations and manipulating them, effectively using propaganda and to project himself as the leader. The conditions were right, and he's able to be that person, that strong leader that Germany is looking for in 1932 and 1933. So there we have his rise to power. Now, I want us to look at the advice for dictators. All right. And so please call that up, and it's going to look something like this. All right. Advice for a dictator, and for those who want to become one. What's our thoughts about that title? Either put it in the chat or unmute it. Do we have any reactions? It's very bold. Absolutely, it's bold. And I don't think Joseph Goebbels is really mincing words here when he is, and this comes out in 1932. All right, so Hitler does not have the chancellorship yet, does not have the presidency yet, and he is definitely the leader of the Nazi Party, per se. So this appears in Der Angriff, which means the attack, and it's in a Nazi newspaper. And there's other Nazi newspapers, and most political organizations back then have their immediate outlook. And I suppose even today you could say the same thing. When we throw out conservative and liberal media, and definitely in the 19th century in American politics, you could find newspapers that were associated with the Democrats or with the Republicans as well. So this is not out of the ordinary in Germany by any means. So when we look at the message, it is that Joseph Goebbels, just by the title, is openly advocating a strong leader. Now, is he projecting Hitler as that strong leader? All right. And also in the chat here, these are traits to follow. Yeah, these are traits to follow that Joseph Goebbels thinks these are traits that a strong leader needs to have. All right. So as we look through this together, think about maybe which ones perhaps speak directly to the man. All right. Adolf Hitler. A dictatorship requires three things: a man, an ideal, and a following ready to live for the man and the idea, and if necessary, die for them. Ooh, that's strong. A dictator can rule against parliament when necessary, but never against the people. Sitting on bayonets is uncomfortable. I think that's a no-brainer. A dictator's first task is to make what he wants popular, bring the will of the nation in tune with his own will. Only then will the broad masses support him in the long run and join his ranks. Okay? As we're going through this, feel free to throw your thoughts in the chat or unmute. Dictatorships will rescue a nation when they know better ways than the previous government forms that they are fighting. Oh, I skipped one. A dictator's highest duty is social justice. Now, that phrase is used a lot in the 20th century, social justice, not only by Adolf Hitler, but also by like Mao Zedong and by Juan Perón of Argentina. Even Joseph Stalin will use the idea of social justice. And we will have American presidents like Lyndon Johnson that will use the idea of social justice. Or we'll have leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. use social justice, or Mahatma Gandhi, social justice. So that's kind of like this catchphrase that's picked up by lots of individuals. A dictator does not need to follow the will of the majority. He must have the ability to use the will of the people, though. That's interesting. Leading parties and masses is the same as governing the nation. Dictatorships must be able to survive on their own spiritual reserves. The ability to speak is no shame. It's shameful only when actions do not follow words. Speak well is good. To act bravely is better. Nothing is more foreign to dictatorial thinking than the bourgeois concept of objectivity. And the bourgeois is the middle class. Dictatorship speaks only or openly about what it is and what it wants. Nothing is farther from it than to hide behind a facade. Dictatorships that hide behind the law to give themselves an appearance of legality, even if their actions disagree, are short-lived. Only those who lack courage to join a party value being above the party. When the world collapsed, foundation shake, revolution fevers spread through peoples and nations, one must join a party. This must be the Nazi Party. It may sound grotesque, but it's true. The nature of a dictator must be clear from his name. One cannot rule with a name like Mueller or Meyer. Oops. Well, Mueller and Meyer are just common German names. A true dictator depends on himself. Everything great is simple, and everything is simple is great. The army exists to defend the country against external threats, not to suppress the people in its interests of the thin layers of upsurgers. Dictatorships cannot defend itself with its own supporters, deserve to be displaced. Rivera fell because its power rests on guns. Mussolini's work is unshakable for his people, for he is his people's idol. So there we go. So when you look at this, which one or ones might speak about Adolf Hitler? He doesn't use the word Hitler in it all. He doesn't mention the guy's name at all. Because there are a number in there that can speak to Adolf Hitler. And this type of document, if we did an OPVL on it, this is an extremely valuable document. The part about rescuing a nation, absolutely. Goebbels is presenting Hitler as the only one that can rescue the nation. Absolutely. All right, anyone else? You know, so again, if we did an OPVL on this, this is extremely valuable for historians in understanding the rise to power of Adolf Hitler, the effective use of propaganda, and using conditions to their advantage. 1932 is a crisis time in Germany. Of course, you know, it's limiting in that it only is only presenting Hitler as the one. There could be others, but Hitler is definitely going to be emerging here. You know, the ability to speak, the ones that talk about speaking ability is right up or right in Hitler's wheelhouse, if we look at it that way. Okay, and about the idea of social justice. There is something in the work of what the Nazis are trying to project. There is this idea of social justice in it, but for who, you know, is this social justice for? If you are German and fit the criteria, then there's going to be social justice. If you don't fit the criteria, it doesn't apply to you. And we know it can be the non-Aryans, such as the Jews, but can be political opponents. It can be other ethnic, racial groups as well. Okay. So I want to show that document because of its value, and it comes out in a critical time period, and it speaks to Hitler, and it's a very effective piece of propaganda. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the document or about the notes that I had given? I took a lot of time here, but I wanted to make sure that I covered the rise to power. So then when we look at Joseph Stalin, we can do a little comparison and see the differences here and how those individuals gain power. All right. Well, that is all what we have for today. No homework assignment yet. You do have that one that I did post, but really isn't due until next week. And so you can work on that. Tomorrow we will do a little activity in class. So we'll take a look at some other documents as well with that. So without further ado, then we are done here, and you are free to go. And so I hope you have a fantastic day.